In the previous episodes, we talked about attracting and maintaining talent in the organization. Today, I'm going to share my views on learning and mentoring. Every organization is essentially a learning organization. I don't care what industry you're in, maybe software, retail, manufacturing, or finance. Organizations live or die based on how quickly they can adapt to market or other changes by adopting new processes, technologies, efficiencies, or innovations. The problem is, how do you retool, retrain, develop, align, and motivate your people to embrace change and charge forward? Here's a hint. For 60 to 80% of your workforce, that portion we call millennials and Gen Z, the old way doesn't work anymore. You need to retool how you retool by adopting a peer mentoring program. As a Gen Xer myself, I've worked in and led organizations for 25 years. I've seen trends come and go. This time it's different. 25 years ago, let's say the late 90s, we thought the world was moving fast. The dot-com boom was heating up. Companies like Netscape and Microsoft threatened to rule the internet. Pets.com was worth more than General Electric. Do you remember the year 2000 bug, by the way, when we thought that the coding of computerized systems would collapse all computers and network around the world? All the rules had changed. But fundamentally, we still learned and drove organizational change the same way. The CEO had a vision and made some speeches and talks. The executive team came up with a new direction. The HR group, for example, rolled out a fancy campaign with sleek PowerPoint presentations about development of talents. Then they trained every level of the organization in this new way. And each of those levels taught the people who worked for them, and so on. In this way, change and learning cascaded from the executive suite through the directors to the first line manager and finally the frontline workers or sales reps. It may not have been efficient or fast, but it was normal and it worked. Here's the problem. Millennials and Gen Z don't work, relate, or learn that way. They have different needs, expectations, different motivations, and certainly different priorities. It does no good to hammer the old square peg in that round hole. You need a new peg and a new hole. Check that and throw all your pegs away. Millennials and Gen Z are different. Imagine you are Fox or NBC and you are negotiating billion-dollar contracts to televise NBA games. You profit from those contracts by selling advertising, right? And the most valuable demographic is this 18 to 34 years old. The problem is that generation doesn't watch the game actually. Around 50% only watch highlights. The reason? They can't see through. They have too many other distractions. And they'd rather be on social media or other social platforms like multiplayer video. Then how do you get their attention? What do? You engage them with their peers. Here are 5 reasons why peer mentoring is better suited to the learning priorities and needs of millennials and Gen Z. Reason number 1. They like to snack, not feast. Millennials and Gen Z don't like to waste time at all. They don't want encyclopedias, they don't want workshops and seminars. They don't even want to watch a whole football game or a movie at once. They want to learn when and where they need to, just in time. In other words, it's not about spending a couple of days of preparing a big feast that after all they won't eat. You need to give them information in little bites that meet their needs in the moment. Reason number 2. Here we are now, entertain us. Do you remember this song? It was Nirvana's Kurt Cobain, but he was actually talking to Gen X when he sang this line. But it fits perfectly with millennials and Gen Z, As I said, Gen Z don't want long, boring lectures or workshops. They want their learning to be engaging, stimulating, and mostly self-directed. That's why digital and social work so well with them. Also, they prefer their learning on their time, on their terms. They like quick access to videos or to engage with peers on Slack or Zoom. They want dialogue, not lectures. Reason number 3. Who cares if you are the so-called expert? Millennials and Gen Zs have no respect for experts. They don't trust degrees, credentials, or even experience. They only trust you if you know what they need to know and you prove it by delivering the goods. Think, for example, of social influencers on different platforms. These people may seem ridiculous to Gen Xers because they have little credibility outside of their own fame. But millennials and Gen Zs listen because they believe in them and like what they say. Reason number 4. Data does it. Millennials and Gen Zs aren't into conceptual frameworks or sweeping theories. They don't trust your models or trends. They trust data. So show them the numbers and prove the value of what you are trying to get them to take in. Better yet, get their friends to do it. They trust what those friends have to say. All the rest is more kind of blah, 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 blah. Reason number 5. Learn, share, repeat. Millennials and Gen Zs don't just like sharing information with peers. They actually learn that way. They're used to asking each other for help. And they learn best by sharing. Learning by sharing is the definition of peer mentoring. The hard thing is you need to rethink and reshape how you conceive of and distribute new information, new training, and new ideas throughout your organization. Here's the good news. You don't need lots of resources and structure to do it. Going forward, the better way to drive change and learning in any organization will be by enlisting your workforce to do what they've always done. Communicate and engage with each other on social media and through video. Sometimes, of course, face to face. The best thing is that you are also building culture, engagement, loyalty at the same time. The old rule was, that people don't leave organizations, they just leave managers. The new rule is people don't stay in organizations, they stay with their friends. You want to hear more about peer mentoring? Reach out. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you're ready to improve your business, please visit christostsolkas.com. You can apply for a consultation with me or purchase your copy of The Gift of Crisis. Plus, you can explore my blog posts and join my newsletter for helpful business advice. Don't climb this mountain alone. Let me show you the route towards business success.